I was still seated when my mother leaned in, lifted her mug, and said, "Watch this." The room smelled like coffee and lemon polish, the kind they use on old wood to make it shine. Conversation stalled the way it always does right before something goes wrong. The liquid came fast, splashing over my hair and soaking into my sweater, hot for a second, then cooling as it slid down my back and settled against my skin. "That's how we deal with trash," she said, clear and proud, like she was delivering a line she'd practiced. Phones rose almost immediately. Screens lit up. I didn't shout. I didn't defend myself. I stood, left cash on the table, and walked out alone, unaware that this quiet exit would be filmed, uploaded, and replayed by strangers who would recognize my face before they ever knew my name. Before I go any deeper, hit like and tell me where you're listening from. And if you've ever been publicly humiliated by family, stay here. My name is Lauren Hayes, and I work in cybersecurity. I'm in my early 30s now, old enough to know exactly who I am, young enough that my family still speaks to me like I'm a phase they expected to grow out of. I live in Columbus, Ohio, in an apartment that's quiet and orderly, filled with furniture I bought because it lasts, not because it photographs well. I drive the same car I've driven for years. It starts every morning. That has always been enough for me. For my family, it never was. To them, success has a costume. It has a recognizable logo, a price tag, and a steering wheel you can spot from across a parking lot. If you don't look successful, you must not be. And if you don't perform it loudly, you're embarrassing everyone else. My mother has always been the director of that performance. Every gathering is staged, every detail is controlled. She doesn't ask how you're doing, she scans. Clothes first, then posture, then what you can brag about. She believes shame is motivation. She calls it teaching. My older brother, Mark, learned that lesson early. He loves an audience, loves jokes that land at someone else's expense. My sister Elise follows whatever makes the table laugh. My youngest brother, Noah, copies whoever is loudest in the room. None of them ever pushed back, not once. The only person who never joined in was my grandmother, Ruth. She's the reason I kept showing up at all. When I was younger and told my family I wanted to work with computers, they laughed, said it wasn't practical, said it wasn't a real future for a woman. My grandmother didn't argue, she just helped me anyway. Quiet tuition payments, groceries when money was tight. A note slipped into my bag that said, "Keep going." That's why I went to the brunch. Once a month, same country club outside of the city, same long table, same forced smiles. It's where my family pretends we're close, where they measure worth in things that can be compared out loud. I hadn't been going regularly, but my grandmother asked. She wanted everyone together. She's getting older. When she asked, I said yes without thinking. I wore jeans and a plain sweater, nothing flashy. I arrived alone. The moment I walked in, I felt it, that familiar tightening in my chest, the sense that I was already failing a test no one had explained. I should have trusted that feeling, because the moment I sat down, I stopped being a daughter. I became a prop. The brunch moved the way it always did, like a script everyone but me had memorized. Plates clinked, mimosas refilled themselves. My mother sat at the center of the table, shoulders back, voice just a little louder than necessary. She asked questions that weren't really questions, statements dressed up as concern. Mark started it. He leaned back in his chair and smiled at me like he was about to perform, asked if I was still driving that old car, the one that refused to match the rest of the family. Elise laughed before he finished the sentence. Noah glanced at my shoes, then at my face, waiting to see how I'd take it. I answered the way I always do, calm, short, polite. That irritated my mother more than any argument ever could. She began comparing me out loud. Mark's latest deal, Elisa's new kitchen, Noah's recent trip paid for by our parents. Each example landed like a quiet accusation. Look at what they can show. Look at what you can't. When my aunt asked what I was working on, I barely got a sentence out before my mother cut in. She waved her hand dismissively, like swatting a fly. "She's still on her computer," she said. "Always has been." A few people smiled. Someone snorted into their drink. I felt my grandmother's eyes on me. She didn't speak, but her hand tightened around her napkin. That was the only warning I got. My mother stood up, not abruptly, deliberately. She lifted her mug, glanced around the table, and said, "Watch this." There's a strange silence that happens right before something breaks. I heard it then. The low hum of the room dropped. Even the servers slowed. The coffee poured over my head and down my shoulders. I smelled it before I felt it. Bitter, burnt. My sweater darkened. Liquid pooled in my lap. My mother didn't flinch. She didn't rush. She made sure everyone saw. "That's how we deal with trash," she said again, steady and sure. For a moment, I waited for someone to stand up, for someone to say stop. No one did. Instead, phones came out. Mark was first. He laughed as he raised his screen. Elise followed, angling for a better shot. I saw Noah hesitate, then lift his phone too. Around the table, small red lights blinked on, recording from every angle. I looked at my grandmother. Her eyes were wet, her mouth pressed thin. She didn't move. She was in her late 80s and tired of fighting battles she never won. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a loss of control. This was entertainment. They weren't embarrassed. They were proud. They wanted proof. Something to replay later. Something to show other people and laugh about. I stood slowly. My hands shook, but my voice never came. I didn't give them anything else to film. I placed cash on the table for my meal. I nodded once to my grandmother, then walked away. Behind me, I heard laughter. Someone said, "This is perfect." I didn't know yet how perfect they thought it was. I didn't know where that video would end up. I only knew, as I pushed through the doors into the cold Ohio air, that this moment wasn't staying at that table. The air outside felt colder than it should have, sharp against my damp skin. I stood still for a moment, coffee soaking deeper into the fabric of my sweater, my body tight and unfamiliar, like I didn't quite fit inside myself. The doors closed behind me, muting the laughter, but the sound followed me anyway, louder in my head than the stains spreading down my back. I sat in my car without starting it. My hands rested on the steering wheel, fingers numb, not shaking yet, just distant. I didn't cry right away. I stared through the windshield at people walking past, couples and families heading to brunch or errands, normal people having a normal Sunday, completely unaware that my entire family had just turned me into a punchline. When the tears finally came, they were quiet. No sobbing, just that heavy pressure in the chest that makes breathing feel optional, like the air itself is negotiable. I wasn't crying because my mother poured coffee on me. I'd survived her words my whole life. I was crying because for a split second, I had believed this time might be different. I had believed love would show up. I drove home with the windows cracked despite the cold. The smell followed me, bitter and stubborn. In my apartment, I peeled off my clothes and stood under the shower until the water ran clear. I watched the brown swirl disappear down the drain and felt something else wash away with it. Not anger, but expectation. That night, I sat on my couch with a towel wrapped around my hair, my phone face down on the table. I didn't check messages. I didn't call anyone. I knew if I opened that screen too early, I'd either shatter or say something I could never take back. 6 hours later, the phone buzzed anyway. One notification turned into 5, then 10. My name, my face, the video. Mark had posted it first, caption mocking me for thinking I was better than the family. Elise shared it, adding that sometimes people need to be put in their place. Noah reacted with laughing emojis. The comments started small. Family, friends, old acquaintances, people who only knew me as a holiday anecdote. I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I blocked them all. That was the moment the countermove began, though it didn't look like one. It looked like silence, like restraint, like choosing not to wrestle people who wanted a reaction more than the truth. I made tea and sat by the window. Outside, the city hummed. Somewhere, servers were copying the video, reposting it, pushing it farther than my family ever intended. I didn't know that yet. I only knew one thing with absolute clarity. I wasn't going to chase my dignity back from people who enjoyed watching me lose it. The next morning, I went to work. I answered emails. I reviewed plans. I focused on the systems I was building, the ones designed to protect people from being exposed without consent. The irony wasn't lost on me, but it steadied me. By the time my phone started ringing nonstop, I understood something my family never did. If you stay quiet long enough, the truth doesn't disappear. It gets louder. The video didn't explode all at once. It crept. At first, it stayed exactly where my family expected it to stay, shared among relatives, a few old friends from school, people who already believed whatever version of me my mother had been selling for years. The early comments matched the caption. Jokes, laughing emojis, little digs about how money changes people. I didn't read most of them. I didn't need to. I'd heard those lines my whole life, just usually without an audience. Then someone shared it outside that circle. I never found out who. It could have been a distant cousin, a friend of a friend, or someone who didn't think it was funny. someone who saw a woman being humiliated and felt that pull in their gut that says, this isn't right. Wherever it landed wrong. The tone changed fast. The jokes disappeared, replaced by questions at first, short and cautious. Is this real? Why is everyone filming? Then longer ones. That's abuse. Why is no one stopping her? This woman is being assaulted and her family is laughing. By the next morning, the video wasn't being shared with captions anymore. It was being reposted with explanations, with outrage, with pauses and arrows and people zooming in on faces at the table. Someone slowed it down frame by frame. Someone else stitched it with commentary. I still didn't respond. I went to work like nothing had happened, sat in meetings, reviewed timelines, drank bad office coffee. Every so often, my phone buzzed again. A message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. A DM that started with, "I'm so sorry." A notification from a platform I barely used. Then came the moment my family truly lost control of the story. Someone recognized me. It wasn't dramatic, no announcement, just a comment that got pinned, then screenshotted, then repeated. My name followed by a question mark. Within hours, it was confirmed. Links appeared, old conference photos, panel clips, articles mentioning my work in cybersecurity. People connected dots my family never bothered to learn. The narrative flipped. This wasn't a random woman being put in her place. This was a professional being publicly humiliated by her own family. Headlines started careful, then sharpened. Family brunch turns into public humiliation. Video sparks debate on emotional abuse. When private cruelty goes public. I didn't reach out to journalists. I didn't need to. They found me anyway. Emails piled up, calls from numbers I didn't recognize, messages offering help, damage control, crisis management. I ignored most of them. I released one short statement through a colleague. Nothing emotional, nothing accusatory. I said I appreciated the concern, that it was a private family matter, and that I was focusing on my work. That was it. That silence did more damage to my family than any angry post ever could have. While I stayed quiet, the consequences started landing. Mark called first. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, his voice unsteady, saying the video was being misunderstood, taken out of context, that people online didn't know our family dynamic. He asked me to say something, anything, to help him. I deleted it. Elise didn't call directly. Her husband did. His voice was polite in a way that made my skin crawl, rehearsed, careful. He said Elise was devastated, that this wasn't who she really was, that her friends were asking questions, that her reputation was being damaged unfairly. I blocked the number. Noah sent paragraphs, apologies tangled with excuses. He said he just followed everyone else, that he never meant for things to go this far, that his coworkers were recognizing him, that his boss had asked him into a meeting. I didn't reply. My mother was last. She called from a number I didn't have saved. When I answered without thinking, her voice snapped sharp immediately. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't apologize. She said this was my fault, that I needed to fix it, that I needed to tell people she was joking, that I was too sensitive, that I always had been. I listened until she ran out of breath. Then I said calmly that the video showed exactly what happened, that I didn't post it, that she did this in public, that the internet didn't twist anything, it just saw it. She told me I was destroying the family. I told her I wasn't responsible for cleaning up a mess I didn't make. I hung up and, for the first time in my life, I blocked her too. The fallout didn't stop there. Mark's job became a problem. Clients recognized him. Reviews appeared asking whether the man laughing behind the camera was the same one handling their accounts. His employer issued a statement about values and conduct and let him go within days. Elise's life didn't collapse all at once, but it cracked. Invitations slowed. Friends went quiet. Her husband's career stalled in ways that don't show up in emails, but linger in closed doors and missed opportunities. He blamed her. She blamed me. Noah's job disappeared overnight. The company said they couldn't employ someone who publicly celebrated abuse. Screenshots don't care about intentions. My mother didn't lose a paycheck, but she lost something she cared more about, her image. The board she sat on asked her to step down. The country club reviewed her membership. Friends who once smiled politely stopped calling. people crossed the street. Every phone lifted that day took something with it when it went back down. Meanwhile, my life moved in a direction I never expected. People in my industry reached out, not with pity, but respect. They said they watched how I handled it, how I stayed composed under pressure. Investors asked for meetings. Partners followed up faster. Someone told me they trusted my judgment more after seeing how I stayed composed under pressure. I thought about that often. The same silence my family mocked had become my strongest signal. The video kept circulating for weeks, then months. It never disappeared. It just settled into the background. A reference point. My family thought they were exposing me. What they really did was document themselves. They showed the world exactly how they treated me when they thought no one important was watching. By the time the noise faded, the damage was permanent, and the balance of power had shifted. What remained wasn't victory, it was clarity. Mark drifted from short-term plan to another. Elise's circle shrank. Noah moved to another city, hoping distance would loosen the shadow that followed him online. My mother stopped hosting, stopped posting, stopped being invited. Her performance she curated for decades lost its audience. My grandmother stayed close. We talked more than we had in years. She told me she was proud, not of what I've built, but how I carried myself when it mattered. She said dignity is a way of outlasting noise. Work steadied me. Conversations were cleaner. Setbacks were technical, not cruel. I didn't celebrate my family's losses. I didn't need to. Consequences did their work without my involvement. I never posted a rebuttal. The truth held on its own. Some nights I still thought about the table and the phones, not with anger, but distance, like a scar you forget until the weather changes. What surprised me most was the relief, the quiet that came from cutting ties I'd been dragging for years. I learned something simple and hard. You don't heal by winning arguments. You heal by walking away from people who need you small to feel tall. Once I did, my life finally had room to grow. I used to think revenge meant shouting back. I was wrong. The real power came when I stopped performing for people who mistook cruelty for love. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, share it with friends who might need to hear it, and comment below with your perspective or the key lesson you took away.